Welcome back to another edition of Viper Bytes. This is Thursday night football edition. We've got the Dallas Cowboys, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we're ready for some football. Here we go. Let's get into this matchup for you right now. Dallas Cowboys 5-11 against the spread, 0-5 with Dak Prescott starting. Something to keep in mind. Now on the flip side, we know what the Buccaneers can do. They were exceptional last year against the spread. I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me because I didn't do that kind of research. But here we go anyway. Let's take a dive inside these numbers. Dak last year averaged 28.5 fantasy points per game. He was on pace for nearly 6,000 yards passing before that ankle injury that kind of derailed that entire season. And that kind of put us to where we are right now as far as Dallas Cowboys are concerned, where Dak Prescott is concerned. We know in 2021, we're going to see a heavy pass script as far as the Dallas Cowboys are concerned. We'll get into that defense a little bit later and why they're going to be passing a lot. Now, on the flip side, Tom Brady, he's got another year to get a full grasp of this playbook. He's got another full year to get on the pages with the likes of Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, and Chris Godwin. He's got a whole offseason to kind of get everything together. No COVID this year as far as the NFL is concerned. Teams were able to hit the ground running, and here we are, 2021 season about to kick off. Tom Brady's had a full season, a full off season to get in tune with these wide receivers. Now, when we take a look at this a little bit more on the Dak, Tampa Bay's defense faced the second most pass attempts last year, 39.6 attempts per game. So you know Dallas is going to be trying to throw that ball, mostly because Tampa Bay was able to get ahead of teams and keep teams from they had to score to keep up. And that means a lot of passing was coming down. So expect some fireworks tonight. That said, you've got Gallup, you got Cee Dee Lamb, you got Cooper. We got that trio of receivers there for Tampa Bay that we already mentioned. I could see all six of these wide receivers this season hitting 1,000 yards receiving. It's plausible. It really is plausible. That's how good these guys are. We've seen what they've done in the past, and they were all pretty darn close last year. Now, when we take a look at it, Dak inside the numbers in 5 games, we mentioned he was on pace for 6,000 yards. In those 5 games, 151 of 222, 68% completion percentage, 1,856 yards in the air, and then that 9-4 touchdown to interception ratio. Huge numbers, huge benefit to him. We know this is what's going to happen with this offense. Now, Cee Dee Lamb, 74 receptions, 111 targets, 935 yards, just shy of that 1,000-yard marker that we kind of talked about earlier as being the goal for all these wide receivers in this matchup for the season. Now, when we take those numbers, we expand them a little bit more. Cee Dee Lamb averaged 17.1 fantasy points per game in 5 games with Dak Prescott last season. Now, if he's playing the slot, one of the matchups to watch is Sean Murphy-Bunting, allowing the second most yards per slot snap last year amongst cornerbacks who played 200 snaps. And then that's just that's the one matchup I think they can exploit. Whoever that wide receiver is for Dallas who's going to be playing the slot has an advantage there with Sean Murphy-Bunting covering. Now, Amari Cooper last year, he's the big dog. He was the main target there for the Dallas offense, whether that was Andy Dalton or Dak Prescott there for the bit. 92 receptions, 130 targets, 1,114 yards, 5 touchdowns. Again, another 5 touchdown season. Amari Cooper's 52 targets with Prescott was working out to about 10.4 targets per game. We can stretch that out and we can see success all the way through. And then you kind of saw these targets throughout the season. And we're like, okay, what do we got going on here, Amari? Well, Cooper was wide receiver 8, averaging 17.8 fantasy points per game with Prescott in the lineup. And he was wide receiver 23 without him. And that was kind of giving him that number of 13.4 fantasy points per game. Now, the Buccaneers allowed the 5th most receptions at 14.8 and targets 21.6 to wide receivers last year. So you can definitely get these wide receivers in your lineup. Now, Michael Gallup, again, 59 receptions, 105 targets, 843 yards, just shy again, 5 touchdowns. We see that production fluctuate. The least probably other 3 receivers, 11.6 fantasy points per game with Prescott in the lineup, 10.5 without him. So you know what? We can definitely get him in our lineup. And as far as Ezekiel Elliott goes, in 15 games, 244 carries, 979 yards, 6 touchdowns. He also contributed 52 receptions for 71 targets for 338 yards. Now, these were all lows as far as rushing concerns. At 979 was a low. The yards per carry at 4.0 yards per carry was a low. The receptions was a low. Touchdowns, 8 was tying for the 6th, was a low as well. So with Elliott, with Dak Prescott missing time, Elliott suffered. Dak is back. Expect Elliott's numbers to go up a little bit. But again, tough matchup here. This Buccaneers defense allowed league lows in rushing per game at 60 and carries per game at 17.9 to the running backs. Some news and notes here. Zach Martin, offensive guard. He's out, COVID IR kind of thing. And Lel Collins is questionable. He may be out. I'm not too sure at the time of this recording. Now, what does that mean when we flip over? When we talk about that offensive line, we got to talk about the Bucs generating pressure. 45.4% of the opponent's dropbacks, 6th highest in the NFL last year. And then taking that one step further, in the Super Bowl, they only got 3 sacks, but they had 29 pressures on 56 dropbacks. That means on only 11% blitzing. Now, that is insane. That is the most pressures on a quarterback in a Super Bowl since 1992 when the Redskins pressured Jim Kelly, just to put that into perspective for you. Now, when we take a dive into the Bucs numbers here a little bit more and what Tom Brady is going to be dealing with, you know, we talked about that numbers, but 2020, 401 on 610 attempts, 4,633 yards, a 40-12 touchdown to interception ratio, 72.5 QBR rating, 65.7 completion percentage. Now, here we go. Just trying to catch my breath, trying to get these numbers into you as quickly as we possibly can. With the exception of Mike Davis, who could draw the primary coverage of Trevon Diggs, this is a great matchup for both Antonio Brown and for Chris Godwin. Chris Godwin absolutely eats up zone coverage, and Brown, we've seen what he's done in Pittsburgh. He can eat up any coverage. It doesn't matter. We know the Bucs are going to score in bunches. Sorry, Dallas, your defense just isn't there. Trevon Diggs, he might be able to shut down 1 receiver, but he can't shut down 3. Evans last year, 70 receptions, 109 targets, 1,006 yards, 13 touchdowns. He did it again, 1,000 yards for the 7th straight season, breaking Randy Moss's record. Now he's going for an 8th straight season. Definitely plausible. We talk about a 1,000-yard receiver. Here he is. Now, how do we look into this a little bit more? The first season with Brady, you know, he was basically a wide receiver 16, 15.5 fantasy points per game. He had a low in targets. That's the lowest here, and a target share at 18%. Brady spreads this ball around as well as anybody. You look at how he spreads it around. I don't think anyone had a higher target share. I'm trying to look at some numbers here quickly for you, but it wasn't much. I think everyone was in that 20% kind of target share. I'll probably touch on that here shortly. But even Chris Godwin, 12 games, 65 receptions, 84 targets, 840 yards, 7 touchdowns. Wide receiver 15.9 fantasy points per game in 12 games. He had a lot of drops last year, but he also had that surgery on the finger, which could have affected it. I think that's more of an anomaly. I think Chris Godwin is good to go this year. Mind you, if he stays healthy. His ADOT also sat at a career low at 9.9 yards last season. The Cowboys allowed the 5th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers, 42.2 over the previous season. Now, here's those numbers I promised you with the target share. Evans, 21%, Brown, 20%, Godwin, 18%, each finishing with similar target shares between weeks 9 and 17. Antonio Brown, 8 games, 4 started. He managed to get 62 targets, 45 receptions. He ranked as wide receiver 25 with a 14.6 fantasy points per game through weeks 9 through 17, and averaged a healthy 2.07 yards per route run, and his 7th best 5.2 yards after the catch. Now, obviously, we know that Brady doesn't have a favorite wide receiver. He's going to spread the ball around. Looks good for all these receivers in this matchup. Now, at the running back position, this is interesting. Fournette, Ronald Jones. We look at Ronald Jones, 192 carries, 978 yards last year, 7 touchdowns, 28 receptions, 165 yards. He is in line to be the number 1 back there in Tampa Bay. Gio is going to come in there. He's going to handle some passing situations. Leonard Fournette last year, 97 carries, 367 yards, 6 touchdowns. He was a healthy scratch there during the regular season. He came alive in the playoffs in those 4 games, 64 carries, 300 yards with 3 touchdowns and a 4.7 yards per attempt. So these are some numbers to break you down. When it's all said and done, I'd expect the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to walk away with this game quite handily. Their spread is 7.5 points. I would expect them to easily cover this week. And I don't see any way that Dallas keeps this game close. They may keep it close for a little while. But when it's all said and done, expect Tampa to win this game. Let's go 34-22 Buccaneers, Thursday Night Football. And just like that, that's your Thursday Night Football, Dallas Cowboys, Tampa Bay Buccaneers breakdown by Matt Donnelly on Viper Bytes. Till next time.